as well as government and military vehicles tend to disregard traffic laws and they're usually driving a black Mercedes or a Audi or something expensive with a white license plate. Those cars tend to drive around 120 miles an hour on the highway in China. Those situations violates the rights of the citizens in China and goes against the concept of equality because no man should be exempt from the blindness of justice. But yet, many celebrities and rich tycoons in North America receive a more lenient prison sentence compared to the general public. So, this problem exists everywhere. Another problem: China is developing at a staggering pace, but the development is very uneven. A major city in China gets a facelift every few years. However, if you drive 200 kilometers outside a city, the difference is drastic. In the suburbs and countryside, development is rather slow. It's like an upside down pyramid. The city would get majority of the investment, maybe 90%. So the 10% goes to the suburbs, and the 1% goes to the townships. And if you were to look at some of the poor villages, they are barely getting any funding for development. If you were to check on a village from 10 years ago and now, they probably look exactly the same. Let me give you another realistic human rights problem. In China, children undergo mandatory physical examinations every time they wish to enroll in an elementary school, middle school, or high school. Those were conducted for statistical purposes and for the health of the children. However, when the students graduate from high school to pursue post-secondary education, they must pass a physical examination to enroll. Of course, most of them will pass the examination, but some of them will fail due to certain disabilities beyond their control. For example, universities will not accept students who cannot walk or is blind or deaf. Of course, it is rare for students to pursue a university degree if they cannot see or hear, but if you cannot walk, they still won't take you in. Western universities don't really care if you had one leg or two legs if you want to get a degree in economics, but that's just how it works in China. Also, if you want to enroll in the military, you would have to pass the military physical examination, which is much tougher. They select people based on pure natural physique. So, unfortunately for the young Chinese, they cannot enroll in the Air Force to become a pilot just because they want to. The government is doing the picking, but at least it is not mandatory for military duty in China. This is one human rights problem in China. In order for the human rights to be reinforced, the population must be able to live in peace and prosperity first. Then comes human rights. China is becoming a better place. There is a growing middle class, so of course the issues are going to be slowly resolved over time. If you look at the United States, the US talks large of human rights and democracy. Sure, they've introduced human rights and democracy to other countries, like Iraq, but many of the Iraqis are dead from the war. I think they prefer to have their lives first and then have human rights. Regarding this recent Tibetan riot, let's make a comparison between different riots. Let's compare this to the 1989 Tiananmen Square protests and the 2001 Gothenburg riot in Sweden. What really happened in Tiananmen Square is a blur to the most of us. It is very hard to say what is right and wrong. However, the 2001 Gothenburg riot in Sweden was a crystal clear riot reported in every angle by every media. In the city of Beijing in 1981, during the riot, mobs have committed numerous murders on streets. People in uniforms were beaten to death. That includes the police and war veterans. Well, many of them were beaten to death and they were hanged, and their bodies were burned hanging from a bridge or a lamp pole. you cannot justify that action. So the military was deployed, and many people were killed. Many of them are innocent. However, the Western media only shows the demonstration from the students and the civilian casualties. The riot in Gothenburg started from peaceful protests against the participation of Sweden in the EU. Even in that cause, an angry mob was gathered. They destroyed everything they saw. This is such a perfect example of how a mob will always grow because the extremist. And the result? Even the Swedish police had shot a rioter. The Swedes, one of the most developed civilized countries, even they had to deal with the mobs with deadly force. By comparing the two riots, we can find out that what tend to happen in every riot. In every riot, people with unlawful intentions will appear and gather to cause destruction. They will use the opportunity to vandalize and try to do harm. Those kind of people exist in every society, in any race or religion. When that happens, it is the responsibilities of the authorities to intervene. In any country in this world, arsonists and bank robbers will be shot on sight by the police. Based on this, it is very clear on how much restraint the government in China have shown this time in the Tibetan riot. So why are there so many pro-independence Tibetans outside Tibet? The large outflux of ethnic Tibetans emigrating from Tibet happened when the People's Liberation Army moved into Tibet and started a social reform that abolished their theocracy and slavery system. Many of the landowners, slave owners, royalties, loan sharks, they were fled because if they stayed, they would not be able to keep their slaves and land and money that was exploited from people. So they took all they had and ran. Of course, after leaving Tibet, they'll not be able to live in luxury anymore, so they generate this hatred towards China. In reality, they were the ones who were torturing the people of Tibet to have their lavish life. So of course they would want their old Tibet back so they can have slaves again. So why does Dalai Lama have so much to say in politics? Well, this started back from the Qing dynasty. The role of Dalai Lama since the first generation is to be a spiritual man and show enlightenment for the public in the way of the Buddhism teachings. The Dalai Lama's responsibilities did not include any political involvement, not until the Qing dynasty. Tibet was always controlled by royalties and warlords before Qing dynasty. Back in the Qing dynasty, they defied government and posed as a threat to the government. So, emperor sent troops and simply wiped out all the warlords. But to redistribute the power, the Qing government was careless, and they left the political power to the Dalai and Panchen lamas. The Qing dynasty retrofitted Tibet with theocracy, and this was a terrible mistake. The Dalai and Panchen Lama, their godly spirit will reincarnate upon death, and they already held the faith of all the Tibetans at that time, but now they had political power. So they became gods in Tibet, and this continued until 1951. And let me tell you, theocracy is never right. Theocracy is a very backward way of governing people. Theocracy goes back to the Middle Ages, and theocracy makes the people full of superstition. This is why in every modern country in this world, they will separate religion and politics. Thank you for listening.